What's up, y'all? This is Evan. I'm gonna show y'all around my room and tell you some hunting stories. So this is basically the main wall that we got. Got some deer and antlers. A little bit of a turkey fan here. Let's go ahead and start over by the turkey. This is actually a mount that I did myself off of a bird I killed, I think, 3 years ago. I want to say it was April 1st, and I think the season had opened up on March 22nd. I'd had a few birds give me the slip already, and I had a camera out, and I knew they were feeding in the afternoon in this one field. So after the morning hunt, I went and set up in that field and had my decoys out, and I had just given up. Actually, I went up, picked the decoys up, I started walking back to the truck, and I seen this turkey in another field, and I went up and bushwhacked him. I snuck up, crawled through the grass, and actually had my fan decoy back when you could do that. Now it's illegal. But I fanned him, and I walked pretty much right up onto him, and I smacked him. It was the first time I ever did that. It was pretty fun, actually. And then I took him home, decided I wanted to do a little mount with him. Y'all can check that out. I love how it looks with all these feathers and all those colors you can see. Like greens and sometimes even little purples. Pretty sweet. He wasn't a bad bird. Now we get to the deer. This one right here was my second 8-point, and it's the biggest one I think I've ever killed. I shot him in 2012, and it was on October 12th, about 8:15 in the morning. I was sitting out on a soybean field with my dad. I had just started shooting, really, not just a couple years, and we had a doe come out into the plot, and I ended up I was thinking about shooting, and she had a little fawn with her that didn't have any spots, and I was kind of on the fence about it. I didn't want to shoot the mama and then have the baby go off and not fend for itself and be coyote bait. But yeah, I ended up, right as she was about to leave, turn into the woods, I ended up shooting her and dropped her in her tracks. Probably about 80 yards or so. And then me and Dad high-fived, the whole spiel. We were all excited. And we waited there probably, I don't know, 30 minutes or so, just waiting to see another deer. And right there at about 8:15, I seen something big coming through the pines. It was planted pines on the edge of that field. And I could just see the brown body of this boy right here. And he's got scars all over him, you can see. He's a big old buck. But yeah, he stepped out right there in the edge of the pines, and I seen just a little bit of the antlers, and I was like, oh my, I'm about to take him out. And sure enough, I put it on him, and that was that. Dropped him in his tracks too. But yeah, I think we took him to taxidermist, and taxidermist said he was 141 or 142 inches. But I don't know. Inches don't really matter a whole lot. It's more about the experience to me. But that's a damn good one. Let's see, and this is another buck. This one's a 9-point. that me and Dad were sitting in the stand together with. And that was the year after I killed this one. We funny story, we had actually seen a bunch of tracks over in by the corn pile in the back of this field where one of the stands was at. And it was a bunch of buck tracks going around in circles like they'd been fighting. And that was a Friday night. We had hunted Friday night and then seen all them tracks when we poured out corn. And then Saturday night, we went back and sat at that stand, and we took a decoy, like an archery decoy, with us, and we poured all types of tanks and all that deer pee all over it. And we got there probably 3:30 in the afternoon. It was Veterans Day, 11/11, and shoot, we waited a while. It finally got dark and some deer started coming into the field, and I think it was 3 does that had come into the field, started eating some corn, and right about last shooting light, they started getting a little spooky, and something cut across the field and cut a circle right in front of the decoy and scared them does off. And it was this buck right here, and he stopped right there at the edge of the field just for a half second. And I mean, he didn't give me a whole lot of time, but I pulled the gun up, clicked safety off, and shot. And the funny thing, fire flew out of the barrel. I couldn't see anything. I mean, it was so dark. I didn't even know if I hit him. You know, I mean, I put it where I thought I was supposed to put it, but I didn't know if I was going to get him or not. We ended up looking at night, probably about 20 minutes after that, and there wasn't any blood, no nothing, you know, and we just went to where he was standing and started fanning out into the woods, and he was piled up with his belly down in the pine straw and leaves and stuff, and you could barely see him. You could just see the horns poking out. So yeah, that was a fun hunt, really. Dad likes to call him Rodeo because he was doing like a rodeo show for us. But that's a pretty good one too. I like this book. Oh yeah, and I nicknamed him too. I nicknamed this one Chase because he was chasing them girls around. And this one, I nicknamed him Snoopy because he was snooping around looking for that doe that I had killed. And this one, this is my most recent shoulder mount. It is a 8-point with the velvet peeling off. And I love this mount probably the most because I think it's so unique. This is actually an early season deer. I don't really hunt too much in August, you know, around opening day because it's so hot with all the mosquitoes and stuff. But I decided I wanted to go, and I ended up sitting out into the swamp, and the mosquitoes tearing my ass up. But I was putting up with it, and I was actually shooting my brother's gun. I had knocked my scope off, and it wasn't shooting right. I was actually shooting my brother's 270, and same deal. It was getting dark, and I seen something flicker in the edge of the woods, and I just stayed real still, sitting in the stand. I could tell it was a deer, and it looked like an ear of a deer that just flicked. I guess he's trying to get the bugs off of him. But he stood there for probably 5 minutes, and I didn't move a muscle. And then finally he stepped on out, and I could see them horns, and I was like, oh boy. There it goes. And sure enough, I thought he had a drop tine because you see all this right here hanging down. It was so dark that I thought, oh my gosh, he's got a big old drop tine hanging down. But no, it was just that velvet. But yeah, he come out to the corn pile. This was a short shot. It was maybe a 60-yard shot. I mean, he was close. But same deal, put it where it needed to be, dropped him. He didn't move a bit. Man, that was a big old buck too. I think he was probably close to 200 pounds, if not. We didn't weigh him, but my God, he was a big one for sure. And he wasn't all the way rutted out, so he still had that body fat on him. It was a big old deer. So that's my 3 favorites. We'll move on down to here. We got some spirits and other goodies. This is the top of my bookshelf here. And we got turkey fin, a skull mount, some spurs, antlers, old shotgun shell box, some spurs I got off a turkey a few years ago. And this 8-point here, I actually killed that December 20th, 2020, I believe. And I saw something cool on the internet saying you could bury the deer head and it comes out all brown like this with a skull mount. So I went ahead and tried it. I think it looks pretty cool. But yeah, he's a nice little buck. Got some unique little acorn points. And all these horns is just sheds and stuff I found. And this was actually a little buck that I shot when I was probably 13. He hadn't much of nothing. But that one was at my uncle's farm. And I was sitting with Dad again, and it was early. It was probably 4 o'clock. And some does came out. He came out right behind them. And he was facing us the whole time. He stuck his neck up to look. And I shot him right under that white patch, and I dropped him in his tracks. It was the coolest thing. It was the first time I'd ever done that. Let's see what else we got. This is actually 3 deer. I got one laying on the ground right now. But this was all last year. I had a hell of a year. I killed this 9-point here. If you want to count this little point, then he's a 9-point. And then I killed this one. It's a 10 with a sticker. And then I shot this little 8-pointer. It was all beat up. But yeah, this 9-point I had on camera in velvet. And, you know, he was my target buck. And I think it was October 28th I killed that one. It's a real good looking deer. But yeah, he came out last light, and I seen just a little glimmer of the horns, and I was pretty certain it was him, and I put it right behind the shoulder and squeezed off, and I went back to the truck. And I called Dad, you know, as you do. And I was like, man, I just got him. I think I killed him. You know, I didn't go look yet. I'm driving down there now. And, you know, we were all excited. And I drove down there, and the lights hit the patch. And he lifted his neck up and started kicking his legs. And he apparently I had just broken his front shoulders. And he was still kicking. So I had to run down there and shoot him again. It was about scared me to death. I thought he was going to get away, but he wasn't going nowhere. He wasn't going nowhere. This one is a really good story. So this buck showed up, I think, the weekend that I killed this one. And he showed up on camera, and I was like, oh my, that is a giant. And I was like, how can I get on this deer? You know, I mean, I had never seen a buck quite like this. He was just a bruiser, you know, Big 10, got that little kicker on the base. But it was November 4th. I think it was like 30 degrees. I had pictures of him the night before at like 10 o'clock on the corn pile, and I ended up going that next morning. I got there at like 4 or 5 in the morning. I got there way early. I mean, probably an hour and a half, 2 hours early to the stand. And I walked up in there nice and quiet. You know, it was like I was tiptoeing, and it was so quiet in the woods because the wind wasn't blowing and it was cold. I mean, you could just hear everything. So I took my time, got up in the stand real slow. I sprayed out some of that, what you call it? They don't make that code blue stuff anymore, but I sprayed out some deer pee. And I watched the sun come up over that clear cut, you know, and all that frost and stuff started coming up off the weeds. That sunshine was real pretty. But I was sitting there and I was like, man, maybe he ain't gonna come back around. You know, maybe he's on the other side of the property. I don't know what he's doing, chasing the ladies. But right there at about 7:50, 8 o'clock, he showed up. I had 3 does come out into the clear cut, and they come right by the stand looking all nervous. And sure enough, he was right behind them. He was cracking logs, running through the clear cut, catching up to them. But yeah, that was a great buck. I'll go down here to this one. Ain't much to look at. I got some broken tines and all. Just a little 8-pointer. But he was chasing does when I seen him too. He was running around in circles, and I just couldn't help myself. It was too much adrenaline. But yeah, that was last year. That was all in one season. It was a great time. Some nice deer.